Have you noticed it's been a little bit wet lately? Well, depending on where you live, of course, but if you're in Queensland, and especially on the coast of Queensland, well, look out your window. It's probably raining right now. This has been an extraordinarily wet summer, especially across the eastern side of Australia, and that is contrary to predictions. I'd like to have a chat with Joanne Nova about that because, well, Joe, you've done a wonderful job of covering this on your blog. We've syndicated that blog onto our blog as well. People can check it out there and find yours in the link underneath this video. What is going on? How have we ended up with this discussion of a wet El-Nino, a contradiction in terms as far as anything I was told when I was a kid?
Well, to me, this just what underlies this is the BOM selling themselves as if they can predict the weather in the long run. And while they're doing a great job up to a point on the short-term forecasts, when we're talking short-term, we're talking 10 days or less, a week, and the weather is really hard to predict. But they sell themselves as being able to tell us what summer is going to be like when clearly they can't. And they have also advertised and made the most with their headlines on the idea that an El Nino summer means dreadful heat and bushfires and all that kind of stuff. And of course, as you mentioned just a minute ago, as we were talking, this comes back to the farmers and the farmers needing these 1 to 2 month predictions or next season predictions.
That's right.
So that they can make decisions which cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars if it goes wrong, which it so clearly has, as we can look at what the BOM was predicting in September.
Yeah.
And the headlines from that. And it was clear, the summer was going to be severe heat and it was an El Nino, scary. And there was no mention there that sometimes El Ninos don't end up being dry and hot. And that there was also no mention that the BOM hadn't predicted what was going to happen with this. In fact, none of them did. Their scientists are currently coming out saying, well, it's a bit of a mystery what's gone on in 2023. We don't really understand this.
Well, I can remember as a kid, you would assume that tomorrow's forecast was going to be pretty good, and maybe the 3-day forecast, would be average, and then beyond that, it was going to be useless. These days, I'll give them credit. I do feel like the 3-day forecast is pretty rock solid, and even out to 7 days can still be a useful indication of what the weather is likely to do. But that's about the limit. And as you said before, predicting the weather is phenomenally complicated. We're talking about a phenomenally complex fluid dynamic system that has a literally impossible to know number of variables that interact in ways that cannot be reliably predicted. But predict is what they try and do. And this was their prediction for rainfall. This hot and dry El Nino was going to cause way below average rainfall. And as you point out in your blog, Joe, that's what actually happened. At some point, you have to ask, if you can't get this right, why are you trying to make these predictions at all? Surely at this point, this is just doing more harm than good.
And I would agree with you because the BOM sells themselves as if these predictions have a level of uncertainty which makes them worth betting trillions of dollars on. I mean, think about the long-term predictions here. The BOM, the long-term predictions are saying we should bet our entire economy trillions of dollars on changing our weather, on shoring up coastlines, on changing the way we use our land, on building billions and billions of dollars worth of interconnectors in order to put solar and wind in. And all of this bet is based on the BOM saying absolutely for sure the weather 50 years from now is going to be appalling and this and that will happen and so on and so forth. And so, bet the entire economy on the BOM's predictions, and yet they're not honest about the chaos and the chaotic element and the fact that they really can't predict the weather even one summer in advance. And this is what gets me. It's this green ideology, this obsession with CO2, which, all their models are based on CO2. Now, obviously, that's not affecting their 1 week predictions so much, but it is predicting their long-term predictions, their summer predictions are affected by this. The ideology stops them using other factors like solar factors. There's zero influence there from solar wind, zero from solar magnetic effects, from the way the UV and infrared change, from cosmic rays, and the entirety of space weather amounts to nothing as far as the BOM's concerned. So it's no wonder they can't predict the weather in advance.
The phrase space weather would probably sound odd to a lot of people that, unlike you and I, who are tragics, haven't been spending their lives diving into these sorts of things. But space weather is actually a thing, and as well as the movement of the planets, changes in the orbit, Milankovitch cycles, planetary alignments, all of these things It's not woo-woo horoscope stuff. All of these things do actually have a real-world impact.
And very well, this is it. And we've known since the 1800s, they were aware then that the wheat prices varied according to sunspot cycles. And you think, so nearly 200 years, we've realized that there was a connection between sunspots and rainfall, stream flow, groundwater restocking all over the world. So something is going on. Now, we don't know what it is, but nobody's really looking to find out either. And that's my problem with all of this, is that they don't want to find out that the sun actually might control the climate because, well, you can't tax the sun. You can't generate, emissions trading schemes based on what the sun does. So it's just politically they do not want and cannot find a reason for the sun to be driving these things. And because of that, their models just keep failing. But here they are setting themselves up as if farmers and the country and our electricity system should all be redesigned based on BOM expertise, world best standards. And it might be world's best standards, but world's best standards are terrible. Can't we be honest about that? And so this is where people say, well, I think there was one spot up near Cairns that got something like 7 feet of rain in 5 days. Sorry to use the old terms.
The old
like
money.
2 meters. 2 meters, just shocking amount of rain in 5 days, which wasn't predicted in advance by the BOM. So then we are talking 1 or 2 or 3 day predictions. Now, a lot of people who are skeptical of the BOM say, well, we should really be honest and forgive the BOM because no one can predict that kind of stuff. The fact that the cyclone happened to sit there, and I'm talking about Jasper, of course, and sit there so long that it just dumped all of this rain, no one could have seen that coming. And that may well be true. But I am so fed up with giving the BOM guys an excuse, a forgiveness for getting those things wrong while they're busy selling us stuff and selling our nation down the drain in terms of billions of dollars of money taken from farmers and bricklayers and, people who haven't got much money, the poor, paying more for their electricity than they need to in order to do this transition while the BOM sits there silent. The BOM never comes out and says, well, the long-term predictions are full of uncertainty so large, they're far bigger than the trends being predicted. The BOM has no honesty on the long-term predictions. So when they get the short ones wrong and they score a lot of flack for it, which they did this time, then, I'm saying, well, get your act together, guys. Start being honest about the uncertainties and we'll be a lot more forgiving when things go wrong in the short run.
We've been watching some footage there from Channel 9 News showing the absolute devastation that some of these floods have caused. And of course, our hearts go out to everyone that's been affected. This can be very life-changing and in some cases life-destroying and indeed life-threatening when you have these sorts of weather events, particularly if people have not been properly forewarned and had the opportunity to prepare. But you made the comment earlier, Joe, that no one's really looking into this, referring to solar weather and its impact on Earth. And you're almost correct. No one official, no one government is looking into this. But there are actually a few individuals who do factor these things into their discussions. And I know you and I are both aware of Inigo Jones. I'd recommend anyone have a look at his page. I'm aware of AV Weather. I don't know the person's name, but AV Weather is another Facebook page. And also a website called Electroverse, which I've been following now for, it's got to be 10 years or more. And these are the people that over time have really educated me and helped me, along with yourself, of course, Joe. You've been covering many different aspects of this for a decade or more. One of the things that I find particularly striking, I read deeply a lot of Electroverse's content on solar sunspot activity and the impact of that on the climate. And I then derived from his work and my understanding of his work, I then had a look at the history of sunspots and I had a look at the history of the climate in the southeast of Australia. And in 2020, if you go back to my very first ever Slow Chat, I talked about the fact that the following number of years, and I believe it'll be decades, but certainly years, were going to be wetter and cooler than average. Now, that was early in 2020 that I went public with that particular prediction. And I'm sorry, but 2020, 2021, 2023, and now the start of 2024 have most certainly followed that prediction. Now, I'm not a genius and I'm not even a subject matter expert. I'm just paying attention to the people that actually know what they're talking about. At some point, you have to wonder if other people have figured this out. Is it more than just incompetence or what have you? Is there an agenda playing out here with the way that the BOM are getting this so wrong?
Well, and obviously, and it might be honest guys sitting in an office, but no one at the tea room will admit that the sun is more than just a big ball of light. They treat the sun, they look at the TSI, which is total solar incidence that coming off they've got that sorted, and it does barely vary. So they look at that and say, well, the amount of sunlight falling on us is pretty much the same from year to year. It doesn't have an effect. But they ignore the fact that it's an electrodynamic ball with an enormous magnetic field that stretches out far beyond Pluto and changes, and the solar wind comes at us at 1,000,000 miles an hour. That's streams of charged particles, and I'm not exaggerating or just throwing that. It is actually 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it changes direction, sometimes coming up from the south, from the north, and I'm talking on a minute by minute basis. It shifts and flicks, the speed increases, it doubles, it shrinks. They can't predict that. They don't understand that. And they don't know what effect that has on the climate either, except then we have all these puzzling links going back years that, in the 1800s, people knew that the price of wheat varied according to the sunspot cycle. And we look at studies like groundwater recharge rates in China, far below the amount of groundwater building up, which obviously is a reflection of the amount of rainfall falling. That it also ties with, solar cycles and jet streams. So something is going on and we don't know what it is. And I might also mention Piers Corbyn at this moment, the brother of the famous Jeremy Corbyn in the UK. And Piers has been predicting the weather for years. And I don't know if you heard the story about him about 20 years ago when he was making bets against the official Met Centre in the UK.
Was he?
And the betting agencies and the brokers actually banned him because he was better than the UK Met. And they banned him from making bets because he was cleaning up.
That is amazing. That's the first time I've ever heard of that. Look, Joe, that's all we've got time for, but this is such a striking story now. The inability and or unwillingness of the BOM to accurately predict medium-term weather trends, and as you've so rightly pointed out, to just be honest about the uncertainties and to let us in on the fact that they really can't know a lot of these things is very, very striking and calls into question why we're spending so much. You look like you had a last comment there.
I do. One more point, which is that the BOM now has the standard absolving itself of liability added onto their website. Apparently, when you click with their app, it now forces people to agree that the BOM has a 699-word terms and conditions statement, which includes that the information at this app may not be accurate, complete, or current. And, what do we pay them for? To get things right, or at least to be honest about what they don't know. But there we are. We pay for it, and then we tick a box that says, well, the BOM can be as wrong as they want, and who cares?
Well, I think if that's going to be their position, then we should say that their paycheck may not be complete or current. That seems like a fair trade to me. Look, Joe Nova, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.